podcast is sponsored by Best at Sea Tours and by Sheets.com, who remind you that a great night's sleep begins with a great set of sheets. And here now is Tom Drake, the guru of the seas, with his special guest, published author Len Camarda.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Guru Learns. If you're just joining us for the first time, this came about because during my other podcast called the Daily Cruise and Travel News Podcast, I don't talk to anybody. I actually talk to a wall while I talk about what's going on in the travel and cruise industry. And now this one allows me to speak to people and talk to them about something that I find very interesting, something that I want to learn about. Everybody that joins me on The Guru Learns has unusual stories or careers or successful careers. And I'm happy to welcome today a guest that I met on Oceania many years ago. His name is Len Camarda, a successful businessman who retired and decided to be a novelist. And I hold those people in such high esteem because to write a novel, not just one, but three, is really, really, really unbelievable to me. So I'm happy to welcome Len Camarda to the program. Hello, Len.
Hello, Tom. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I really am. And I want to thank you for taking the time. Len and I are playing with Zoom today. Zoom can be exciting and helpful. It can be annoying. And so we're all ready to go, though. And I'm going to begin actually by asking you, let's start with this. I did some research. You've written not only the three novels, but you've also written some other books about where you live, Hilton Head. Am I correct?
Well, a number of short stories that largely were based on my time here in Hilton Head, yeah.
And you wake up one day, I'm an avid reader of just novels. I don't really do biographies, other stuff. Did you wake up one day, or this is something you wanted to do your whole life, but business got in the way, life got in the way, being a homeowner, all that stuff got in the way? So now was the time you could sit down and write?
Well, oddly enough, the business is what really prompted this. When I started way back, I joined a pharmaceutical company. And I was out in the field. And after a few years, I was offered a position in the home office in the international division. And it was a job called Manager of Sales Analysis. I was a young guy. I was going to graduate school at night. But it was a great opportunity. And I did want to come into the home office. Not necessarily the international side, but that wound up being very, very good. And when I got in this new job, the main responsibility was writing a monthly report on sales. I would be given reams of computer printouts. And if you remember the old days, these big printouts that would come out.
Those dot printers?
Yeah. By country, by product. So I would get all these computer printouts with all this data. And my job was to kind of put all this together and put together a summary, for management. And I was doing that. And then I learned that the country managers would send in what they call the manager's report to their managers. And within that document, they had comments about market share, the business, regulatory issues, political things, other things that were going on in the country that affected the business. So I wound up getting access to those things. And then I would take those reports plus all the data that I had. And it was like doing research. I had the data, I had the qualitative info from the manager report, and I would put together a storyline. I really enjoyed doing that.
Well, let me ask you that when you were in the field, obviously you were a sales rep for the pharmaceutical company?
That's correct. I started in sales. Yeah.
And you were in the sales. Did you write was your monthly report written in such a way that somebody in the office said, you know what, we found the guy to write our monthly report, somebody that can compile all this? Was it so well written? Did your boss say to you, Len, this is perfect, now you're no longer driving around peddling drugs, you're going to come in the office? It's almost like an editor's position, right? Editor, researcher, writer.
I actually thought I was going to wind up in advertising. If I had a goal, I said that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
That changed when I got into the international side, and doing these write-ups caught other people's attention. And one issue with me was, in business, you have to keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
So had to tone what I wanted to do down. Couldn't get too creative, but then many years later, when I was writing the manager's reports, I could have a little more flexibility.
Yeah. So you wrote. You wrote. I'm reading here. By the way, you hear me talk about Chat GPT. That it is amazing AI, the amount of time you can save by just simply asking them questions. And I asked a bunch of questions, but basically I really looked at your bio about the 3 novels that are available on Amazon, and it is important that before we even get into why you wrote them, you decided after you wrote them that all of the sales and royalties from your books will be donated, and you chose Wounded Warriors and also your local humane. Why did you choose those, and why did you give up your money? You worked hard for it.
Well, I didn't think I was going to be another James Patterson or David Baldacci, so I figured, hey, I don't need it, so let me put it to good use. And the Wounded Warriors, well, obviously, super worthy charity. And the other thing, the Humane Association I was involved with down here, supporting, financially. But this is a no-kill shelter. The people there are just so passionate about working and finding people to rescue dogs and cats that you just couldn't help but, kind of fall in love with that. So the animals that love us, the warriors that, save us, what's better than that?
Well done. So the books are set in Spain. This is where the guru wants to learn. Really and truly, this is not fake passion, fake interest. I'm always... the books are set in Spain, and there's always in all of these novels the people that are investigating the crime, and one of them happens to be with the National Police Force of Spain, and the other one is an ex-Secret Service agent. His name is Gino Cerrone, and her name is Mercedes Garcia. Now, I know these sound like dumb questions, but every time I read books, and I read constantly, and I look at the name, I always think to myself, how did the author decide on this name? Is it somebody he knew? For instance, the Gino Cerrone. And by the way, I talk too much. These books are wonderful. There are 3 of them. They are. I've read them all, and they're absolutely wonderful. And I don't have the 3 titles. It's on a different piece of paper. I know one of them is Toro. Help me with the other 2, Len.
The first one was The Seventh Treasure. The second one was Prey of the Falcon.
Right.
And you're right, the third one is Toro.
It's Toro. So Gino Cerrone, I know if you're listening out there, you wonder what's wrong with this guy, but this is always something I wonder about. Did you know a Gino, grow up with a Gino Cerrone? Is it in-laws, cousins?
No, it's actually a 2-level answer. Sometimes I get frustrated if you read some novels. You've got names of the main characters that you never heard of, Colt Shaw, Tanner Brooks. I mean, these names that I've never met.
You just named the tracker.
Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, I was watching that last night, and I was thinking exactly that. I said, who really is named that? Really? Yeah. So when being an Italian American, I said I'm going to build an Italian American into it. I just picked Cerrone out of the air. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you took a catcher from the Yankees."
Rick Cerrone.
Rick Cerrone. And Eugene, I just picked, but I wanted to call him Gino later in the story, so he had to be Eugene. And many other characters, though, you made a good point. I did identify people that I knew and worked with. And in fact, if I used their name, I sought permission, I get written permission to do that. But Mercedes Garcia actually worked for me in Spain. She was a super bright, lovely, lovely woman. And I kind of twisted her name a little bit. Her full name, there's another name associated with her, because in Spaniards, they can have 3 or 4 names. So I added Rico. Rico wasn't her real name. Mercedes Garcia Rico. So I put that in the book. But her personality, that's why I picked her, because, and that's the other thing. Sometimes you meet people And as you're developing characters, you say, that person's personality really fits with where I want to go with this. So you kind of blend them.
This sounds crazy. I fancied myself a screenwriter for a while, and I wrote some pilots for television. And when I would write what you just mentioned about the character, when I would write about this character, I would write thinking I was that character as far as his tone and his speaking pattern and I interviewed a friend of mine recently, and he has a book out, but he had a collaborator. He'll admit a ghostwriter. And one of the questions she had for BJ all the time was, "Does this sound like you?" So when you're writing for Mercedes and when you're writing for Gino and the other characters, you kind of are inside them when you're writing it, so you can feel like you're speaking for them. Does that make sense?
You get into them. Yes. In fact, one of the books that I read before getting into writing the novels was called The Spooky Art of Writing by Norman Mailer. And he took a lot of time in talking about characters. And what he was saying too is don't get too tight with the character. As your story develops, as things happen, that person, be a man or woman, might just get a little more flexible. So that was the way I took it. I wasn't too rigid, and depending how the story was evolving, the person evolved. At least that's the way I did.
So when it came to plot, again, every time I read a lot of Lee Child, a lot of people, and and they come up with these stories, these plots. How did you come up? You decided to set it in Spain. These books are in Spain. They're very good. I keep saying that, but they are. Because I belong to Kindle Unlimited, and I download a lot of books on Kindle. I know within the first few pages whether I'm going any further with this. It has to have certain elements. I'll backtrack to what you just said. Did you read a lot of books before you sat down to write the novel? Books on how to write it, or you had a feeling because you read so much?
Well, two. The Norman Mailer book was one. The other was a book called On Writing by drawing a blank.
That happens all the time. Somebody wrote it.
Oh, Stephen King.
Okay.
Yeah. Also excellent. So those are the two books that I read in terms of how to start thinking about it, how to structure. But there are other books, how to get involved with.
There's plenty.
Something called the Chicago Manual of Phrasing, Chicago Manual of Style, that got you into more structure. Boring stuff, but you had to do it.
Yeah. So you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to start. How long, the first novel, how long from start to finish did it take you to put it together and put it on? And you did not use AI. You did not use a collaborator. You wrote it. It's all your mind, all your thoughts, correct?
Well, yes. Well, the first one probably took the most research because the Seventh Treasure also goes back 500 years in history.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand the history of the time. And then I wanted to create some historical fiction around that. So I'm back at the time when the Moors, the Arabs that moved up from the Middle East and occupied Spain for 800 years. Mm-hmm. So living in Spain, and I lived in Spain for 6 years. Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating country because it's the only country in all of Europe that had this occupation for 800 years. And by and large, it was a positive occupation because as these Islamic revolutionaries made their way up from Saudi Arabia, kept taking land, because if you were an infidel or you loved Islam, if you didn't love Islam, goodbye.
It hasn't changed either.
No, it's terrible. But when they got to Spain, they settled. And what they brought with that, they brought all sorts of knowledge that they picked up along the way, going through Persia, going through other countries. So they brought information and knowledge on medicine, on agriculture, irrigation. They irrigated fields from the mountains of outside of Granada. They developed systems to irrigate the fields all in Granada and grow incredible kinds of agriculture.
Which always amazes me when I was just in Madrid at the airport, and how can they have developed 800 years ago the most amazing systems, and they still can't figure out how to put enough jetways in the airport so I'm not riding a bus around the grounds looking for a plane. I mean, we're going back. We're going backwards in terms of how things are, but that's another story for another time. When you were reading the books by Mailer and by King, did it say for your first novel you should make it much more difficult? You should go back 800 years. The amount of research, and again, when your first book was written, well, the internet was here, obviously, but not like it is now. Now you can go into Grok or Chat and ask it a question. It's going to give you 30 pages of research without doing anything. It goes through every periodical. You were you in libraries doing that, or you did it online?
I started in libraries, but a lot of it online. But then I acquired the books because I wanted to have the books in my hand. And there were a lot of books. For instance, when you go into the history that I got into, I found a book by Washington Irving. Washington Irving was the guy who wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Rip Van Winkle. Mm-hmm. But in the mid-1800s, he was a U.S. ambassador to Spain. And in fact, lived for a while at the Alhambra palaces, and the Alhambra being the center of the last Moorish kingdom in Spain. And he wrote one book called The Conquest of Granada. And it read as if he was a correspondent right there. It was fascinating, just fascinating to read. And he wrote this 350 years after that happened. So this research also, it's a learning experience, and I enjoyed it.
You have to, you really have to have a curious mind. I have a novel or two in my head, and I know what they would be about. They would be about not a lot of research. They would be about somebody got killed. Let's solve it. Let's move on. The amount of research in all three of your books is unbelievable to me. I also, when I read a book, I wonder, and I'm sure I could have asked Google or Chat this. When you started, did you know the finish, or did you start and figure out you're going to get the finish eventually?
I didn't know the finish.
Okay.
No, I had an idea how, the good guys would prevail.
Yeah.
But how they would do that, I didn't have laid out completely. And I was happy, actually. I was happy with the endings that I came up with, because they kind of moved along as the story moved along. So I was happy with it, but I did not have that laid out in the beginning. Many authors do, but
it's in script writing for television or movies, it's like imperative that you have the bullet points, the chapters laid out, everything structured. And when I would do that, I'm like, I don't know if I like this, because I want it to go where it goes when I'm going. I don't want to have to be inside that space that I planned out earlier, including the ending. The ending will figure itself out as you go along. To me, it's just unbelievable. So the first book, then, from beginning to end, was 3 months, 6 months, a year? 10?
It was probably a year in research. Because, like you said, I made things more complicated than I need to. But when you're doing the reading, and all of a sudden, I thought of the Tales of the Arabian Nights. And Tales of the Arabian Nights, it's called 1001 Nights in Arab Countries. But that's a document that was, and it includes Sinbad the Sailor, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. It's all these fanciful stories that started in the 9th century, word of mouth, and ultimately, became the second most read piece of literature after the Bible.
No.
So somehow my interest and fascination with the tales of the Arabian Nights, I found a way to bring that into the book itself. And that meant also I had to go read all the tales.
I'm going to tell you, I was going to say that, I'm trying to think of his name now. The Hunt for Red October, all of those books.
Oh, Clancy.
Yeah, Tom Clancy. Yeah. I would skim through. It got a little crazy. I didn't need to know exactly the size of the bullet or the speed, speed with which it got through, or the missile and the missile components. I mean, for me, it was a mystery that solved the mystery. But other people that I speak to that love to read, like I do, that's why they read it. They read it for all that intricate information. Is that the right word to describe it? Information that's contained. I like to skip over that, and then we got a body, and let's find out who did it. But other people, and some books, Clancy's books, are either in my library. They're massive when I look at them now. Now that I read on Kindle, it's different. Now this thought just came to my head because I read on Kindle. I don't know how many pages the book is. I don't look at the end. But when you buy a book and you look at a Clancy book, you set aside a couple of weeks to read that book. That sucker was huge. And the amount of effort that goes in that. Now, did you have an editor, or I didn't? There wasn't somebody to go, slow down, Len. It's a little too much.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I did work with somebody. I had to tone it down. I had, and they use words, like. I had 150,000 words. They said, you can't, that's too big. First novel, no way. You should get down to 100,000. And what wound up being, I had to take 30,000 out. I only got to 120,000. So this first book, The Seventh Treasure, it's over 400 pages. The next two were like 300 pages, which would be the normal size of a decent novel. But the first one was more comprehensive than I don't remember it being that long when I was reading it. I remember I read so much that, sometimes it really is just pleasure and it goes in one part of my brain and disappears. But I do remember bits and pieces of it, and I didn't get a chance to look at it before we talked. Basically, I'm trying to remember now. And again, let me remind everybody, this is my opinion. I read all the time, and I read every novelist there is, except for King. You pick one, and including the James Patterson factory now of however many writers he piggybacks. But it's very good. It really is enjoyable. But if I remember, I'm trying to remember, why was the ex-FBI agent in Spain? What was his reason for being there? Well, you mentioned
his sister, right? His sister.
Yes, but let me just say, because while everything is based in Spain, the key character is in America. So what happens is this woman dies in a roadside accident in Spain, in the mountains outside of Granada. When they do the research, they find out her only relative happens to be a guy who's heads a training unit within the U.S. Secret Service.
Right. Okay.
He had been an agent, but now he was in his 50s, and this was a much younger sister. And he goes to Spain basically to bring her body back home.
Right.
But while he's there, they discover that it wasn't an accident. Somehow her car was sabotaged. So that becomes the whole premise of the story. Well, what the hell happened? How does this young innocent girl who's over in Spain and she was on a photography job, how is she killed? Basically murdered. So that becomes the basis of the whole investigation.
And that story, sometimes people acquire it from, they saw something in the paper, heard it, saw it on the internet, and they do some variation. That's just something that was rolling around in your head, a photographer that gets killed and the brother comes, or did you give it a lot of thought? I need something that, will grab people, because I don't mean to diminish the writing, but there's many of the books have the same formula. It's the characters that make the difference, and your characters were very strong in all three books, but it's the characters and also the relationship between the characters and how they communicate, the casualness of it. Those are things that I enjoy. They almost seem real to me. When I'm reading it, I can see Gino. In the beginning, they didn't like they were oil and water, if I remember correct.
Yeah.
Very
but cool. you mentioned a good point, because I was very pleased when I got some reviews of the book. They liked very much the conversation between the people that I had, that it sounded real.
That's it.
And I felt very good about that.
That is, to me, as a reader, it's a necessary ingredient. Otherwise, and I think that's why in many cases, AI and artificial intelligence, they can't understand. The computer doesn't necessarily understand how people speak, and of course, but I don't remember Gino as being like, from Jersey, Secret Service guy. He was sophisticated, but yet, I don't know. You have to read it. You have to read these books. Number one, the reason to do that is because I recommend them. Number two, I'm not Oprah Winfrey here. Number two, the money goes to two great causes, and they're really, really good. My curiosity still remains, though, about the time it took. Now, when you finished the first one, did you go, that's it, I'm done? Did you consider having them both drive off the cliff in a car so they couldn't come back? Or did you know there was going to be book number two?
If I guess just one aside, before I got into this writing, when I was still working, I decided, because I did like writing, I wanted to start a novel. So in fact, I started, and the story is this woman, she's in a car, it's a convertible, she's driving on these cliffside mountain roads in California somewhere, starts to rain. She's got the top down, the rain is pelting her, but she keeps going. She's distraught, she's sobbing, so something's going on there. Then there's a lightning strike, it hits a tree. This big pine tree starts to fall across the road, and she swerves and off the road and into the abyss below.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next scene I have is this guy is sitting at a piano bar. He's a veteran Secret Service agent. He's probably near the end of his career. And he's sitting there chatting with the pianist who's playing some soft jazz, and he's got his drink. And I put together some profiles of him in a number of pages. And then what happens, a movie comes out. It's In the Line of Fire.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're describing Clint Eastwood at the bar.
Yeah, he's sitting at the bar, drinking, talking to the guy on the piano. And I said, my God, that's my God.
They stole your scene.
I took all the pages and I threw them in a drawer.
Yeah.
But when I got back, but it's funny, when I started The Seventh Treasure, I went back to that lady on the mountain road.
But in Spain.
Yeah. And again, my time, being international, I spent more time overseas than I did in the States. In a way, it's sad, but my career, if I wasn't living in a number of different countries, I was traveling to them. So I knew more, certainly about Spain, but more about some of these other countries than I did about, Indianapolis or wherever.
And you know what? Yeah, there's an advantage to that because they are set to Spain. And what you described earlier, because of the amount of research, people will learn about the Moors and less the Moors and the lesses, whatever, which sets it apart from the basic novel that's set in Cleveland.
Well, plus, the other thing that helped me is even after all the research, I went back because I had to make sure I got the details right. So I contacted my travel agent. I wanted a good company that I could just go, just me privately. And we went through the Alhambra in detail in Granada. And I went outside of Granada to the mountains, to the little towns in the mountains that I had in the book. And I had to just want to make sure I got those things right. And one railroad led into the proper second road. And I did the same thing with Prairie de Falcon. After an Oceania cruise, they had a tack-on excursion that went to one of the Arab Emirates. It was Ras Al Khaimah, which is one of the 7 Arab Emirates. So we spent a little more time in Dubai. your favorite place, I know.
Uh-huh.
But then Ras Al Khaimah. So my story, which started in Spain and hit a number of European cities where women disappeared,
Yeah.
the whole story culminates back in the Middle East. And having the ability to go there to see it again, make sure I got things right, helped enormously.
And, years ago, every author got an advance to go do that research because there wasn't. Nowadays, I keep referring to it, but nowadays the power of the internet and the use of AI, and even that's the reason there are so many authors now, but not real authors that they can put it together because they have a lot of help. In your case, my opinion, you're a real author for the amount of time and research and the creativity. Because scenes come in your head. Unfortunately, someone stole it from you for the Clint Eastwood movie, and you threw it out the window, and now you had the girl go off the cliff in Spain, which is nice. If she hit a bus in Cincinnati, it wouldn't be that interesting, but off a cliff in Spain, that's a very sexy start to somebody. So, is there a fourth book working?
Well, that happened. It's funny. I did want to do a fourth book, and I cruise a lot, and I wanted to do a murder on a cruise ship.
Yep.
But then got to thinking there are just too many cameras. So the opening scene that I had developed in my head, well, God, that would be detected in a minute.
Yeah.
So in fact, I talked to one of the safety officers, and I asked him about it, and he only did smile at me, gave me no information about the cameras. So the only way I think I could make this work is if I do a cruise from the 1950s when there weren't cameras all over the place.
Yep.
So I have to think about it. I don't know.
Well, there's a series. I started to read one. I won't say the name of it because I actually don't remember it. They've written like 23 Caribbean cruise mysteries, and I haven't read past the first 10 pages because it's a really bad Murder, She Wrote kind of a book. And I think if I was to write one set on the cruise ship, it would have to be about the ports of call more than the temptation would be to write a book for people that have never been on a cruise to understand all the things that happen. Then it becomes like an instruction manual for the first time cruiser. There's nothing. There isn't anything that sexy about saying that the quality of the beef is better in this restaurant or that restaurant as compared to Spain 800 years ago. It's a whole different situation. And believe me, I think about it all the time, but I just don't have the passion. Two more questions, because I mentioned off air before we started, Robert Parker, the great Spencer for Hire books, was interviewed once, and he said his deal was he was very organized, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, never work weekends. He would work for 6 weeks straight, have a book done, and then he would just walk away for like 2 or 3 months and then start the next one, because he just had to be that dedicated to get up. Don't get distracted. We have to, honey, we're doing this today. No, was that the same with you? Did you have to write every day and just shut out life? Because otherwise life gets in the way. There's things
I did. And that Stephen King book that I mentioned before, he said the same thing. He worked something like from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock, had lunch, and then that was it. I just got so much into it. I would start in the morning, and then, I worked upstairs in my room upstairs, and my wife would call up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock and say, "Hey, you think we're going to come down for dinner?" I just got so into it that no, I that's what I was doing, and that's what I did. So,
now, was it longhand or did you type it?
I did longhand and then type. And why I did longhand is by the way, I also like to write with a pen too, so I enjoy that. So anyway, I write it and then I put it into the computer, and that helps me do an editing. So I take what I've written, and then as I'm putting it into the computer, I can play around with it and make adjustments and change things. So that's why I like to do it that way rather than going straight into the computer.
Well, it's funny. I'm a Catholic.
That was another thing I had to learn how to do that. When I was working, I did emails, and my secretary would do anything of substance. Well, now, hell, I had to learn WordPerfect and Word, and then do all the typing myself. That was a big learning experience.
One thing I regret is never taking a typing course in school. Back then, that was a girly thing to do. I'm a terrible typist. I use dictation programs, and they end up. I wrote a joke about one time. The initial ones were really not very good. You know, you would dictate a letter and say, "Dear sirs," and it would come out like you're from Jersey. It's like, "Hey, yo, loser," and even now, I have to go back, and when I use it on the phone, I have to go back and fix it. So that's unrelated to this. It's my own frustrations. So,
oddly enough, in grammar school, I had a typing course. I don't know, 3rd or 4th grade. We learned how to do typing, and I retained that. I can still do it.
That's fabulous. I can't. Dottie can do it. For those people who don't know, that my wife, and she can type, I don't know how many words a minute, and not even look at it. She can be looking at me, yelling at me, telling me, pick that up. Don't leave it there, and still type what she's doing. And me, I'm hunt and peck, and sometimes not even peck. So that's another reason I haven't done it. That's the other excuse for not having sat down. I have a book in my head, and I think I would do it the way you did it, which is not have a solid outline, just let it go the way it should go. And I'll be honest with you.
You writing a story for a TV pilot. I mean, and you were typing. I remember you were typing on your laptop.
I was
out on the ship.
I was convinced that I was the next James L. Brooks. Hey, this has been so much fun. I didn't mean to yell. Hey, we've known each other a long time, everybody. I'm glad that we had this conversation. I find it interesting. And, again, people have heard this. I don't talk to people during my other podcast. And I only got started doing this because my sponsor asked me to interview him. And it was fun. And I learned about sheets of all things. And now I'm really enjoying these conversations, especially when it comes to writing, because I cannot tell you how difficult it can be, and how depressing and how hard it is to do, and to not write just one but two, and then three, and maybe a four. You never know. And
it's very hard to do what you do. So don't let's kid ourselves.
Yeah, everybody says that, but I guess it is. But it doesn't feel that hard. This one, though, I really enjoyed this guy. You answered all the questions. It was how long? How you were crazy about it, so you kept going. What did it feel like when you finished 400 freaking pages? And even then, it was like 400. I'd be at 300 going, how many you have to have? What did they tell me? How many words that make 300? We're done. But you kept going. What did it feel like when it was now? All right. See, I'll just talk to myself again.
When you hold up, for me, when I hold up the novel, when I hold it in my hand, hardcover,
Yeah.
And I look at it, and this is something that I did. It's tremendous amount of pride. And then the one thing I want to do, I said, I want to make sure my mother gets a copy, and my sister, and my brother. And if nobody else read it, I just wanted them to.
A lot of people read it, and everybody should read. I'm not making. They're great. When I met you and you told me you wrote a book, and I said, all right, I'll download it, whatever. And then I read it. I'm like, wow, first time author. Wow. I mean, all the structure, all of it was there. It was a little wordy, Len. There were a lot of words in it. And I kind of skipped over the Morse part. I went for the less. But the book itself was fabulous. All three of them are great. You can find them on Amazon, and all of the royalties go to Wounded Warrior and to the Humane Association in, help me out, is it Myrtle Beach?
Hilton Head Island.
Hilton Island. And please buy the books. And, you can go on Kindle. I mean, you go on Kindle and get a sample. And when you read the sample, I only buy books on Kindle, but you can read the sample on Kindle. And if you want the hardcover, it is nice to have an actual book, but I read in the middle of the night, so it doesn't work. I need the book on Kindle. So when the wife is asleep, I can still lean the other way and read the book. So please buy the books, help out those great organizations. Len, I can't thank you enough. This was,
I thank you. And by the way, just add, if people go to lencamarda.com, it'll open up a website with all information about all three books. And I really appreciate the time you gave me for this. Thank you.
No problem. LenCarmada.com. Thank you. Just, I don't fake this. I love asking questions about people that write this. I personally find it, I think brain surgery would be easier sometimes. So have a great day. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care of yourself, man. And I hope you make that flight to Aruba.
Well, all right, we'll finish this off. If you don't follow my life on my other podcast, I'm supposed to be on board Oceania Insignia right now as the comedian, and instead I'm at home thanks to Delta Airlines, some fog and some incompetence. But that's another story for another day. So, all right, you stay well, and thank you so much, Len.
Thank you. Take care, Tom.
All right, see you, buddy.